Welcome to our deep dive, and today we're tackling something that can be pretty nerve-wracking for a lot of folks out there, cracking the coding interview. I mean, whether you're actually prepping for a job interview, thinking about maybe switching careers into software development, or even if you're just curious about what makes these interviews so, well, notoriously difficult, we're going to break it all down. And to help us do that, we're diving deep into a book that's basically like the go-to guide for anyone trying to land a software engineering gig. Cracking the Coding Interview by Gail Lackman McDowell.
Yeah, it really is like the Bible for software engineers. It's a classic for a reason. And I think one of the things that makes it so valuable is that Gail, the author, has actually been on both sides of the interviewing table. I mean, she's been a candidate, she's been an interviewer, and she's worked at some of those big name tech companies,
Wow.
Google, Microsoft, Apple.
Okay, so she's been in the trenches, she knows what it's like. But before we even get into the book itself, can you just, for folks who might not be familiar, explain what makes these coding interviews so different from a regular job interview? Like, what makes them so special, or maybe, I should say, terrifying?
You're right. Terrifying's a good word for it.
Hmm.
Because in a typical interview, you might talk about your skills, your experience, all that good stuff. But a coding interview is really about putting you on the spot. Imagine being asked to solve, like, a really complex coding problem, often right there on a whiteboard with everyone watching.
Oh, God, yeah, no pressure.
It's really less about, talking the talk and much more about walking the walk.
Right, so it's not enough to just list out your coding languages on your resume. You have to actually prove you can use them.
Exactly. And that's where Gail's book comes in. It's not just like a random collection of coding problems. It's a really comprehensive guide to understanding that whole interview process, from the initial screening to the final round.
Okay, so walk us through how the book is actually structured. Does it literally, like, walk you through the interview step by step?
It pretty much does, yeah. It covers everything from understanding how the interview is actually designed
Hmm.
to giving you this kind of behind-the-scenes look at how companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook structure their entire hiring process.
Wait, so it actually, like, spills the tea on what these tech giants are really looking for?
It does. It spills the tea, which is great if you're a candidate because,
Yeah, that's
you
juicy.
get this insider information.
So it's not just about the technical stuff then, right? There's a whole section on the behavioral side of things as well.
You got it. It's not enough to just be, a coding whiz. You have to show them you can communicate, work in a team, all that good stuff.
Oh, so you're saying, like, even if you're a rock star coder, if you can't explain your thinking or work well with others, you're kind of out of luck.
Pretty much, yeah. And the behavioral preparation section in the book is great for this. It helps you navigate those tricky personality-based questions that interviewers love to throw at you.
Right, right. Okay, so it really does seem like soft skills are just as important as the technical stuff.
Absolutely.
So does she offer any specific tips on handling those behavioral questions? Like, are there any, I don't know, magic formulas or frameworks she recommends?
Well, there's no magic formula, unfortunately. But she does emphasize the importance of storytelling. It's not enough to just like rattle off your skills and experiences. You need to weave them into like compelling narratives that showcase your abilities and, highlight what makes you unique.
Ah, so it's like instead of just saying I solved a bug in the code, you're saying you should tell a story about like how you identified the bug, the steps you took to troubleshoot it, the impact it had.
Right,
Okay,
exactly.
that makes sense. You're not just a list of bullet points on a resume. You're a human being with a brain.
You're a problem solver.
Exactly. Okay, so we talked about the behavioral side, but let's get to the heart of it, the technical challenge, the coding part. So tell me, what are some of the key takeaways you got from those 150 programming questions?
Well, one thing that really stood out to me was how Gale breaks down 5 different algorithm approaches: brute force, recursion, dynamic programming, divide and conquer, and backtracking. So it's not about memorizing solutions. It's about having, a strategic toolkit to tackle any problem they throw at you.
Okay, so it's like having different weapons in your arsenal, and each one is suited for a specific kind of battle.
Exactly.
But some of those terms you just threw out, like dynamic programming, backtracking, they sound kind of intimidating. Could you break those down for us a little bit, like in a way that even I, someone who's not a coder, could understand?
Sure, sure. So think of dynamic programming as like breaking down a big complex problem into smaller, more manageable pieces. It's like solving a jigsaw puzzle. You don't try to do the whole thing at once. You focus on one section at a time.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then backtracking, that's kind of like exploring a maze. You try different paths until you find the right one. And if you hit a dead end, you backtrack and try a different route.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. So it's not just about knowing how to code, but also about having these like strategic problem-solving
Right, it's
skills.
a way of thinking.
Okay, now looking at this book, it's a beast, over 500 pages. Did Gale really expand it that much in this fifth edition?
She did. It's a monster. Packed with, like, revised solutions, brand new questions, expanded introductory chapters.
Wow,
So
that's dedication.
basically, she took everything great about the previous editions and made it even better.
So she's constantly updating it to keep up with the ever-changing world of coding interviews.
Exactly. Because the tech industry moves so fast, you need a resource that's constantly evolving.
Yeah. All right, so I think we've established that this book is like the ultimate cheat sheet for coding interviews. But I'm still curious, from your experience on both sides of the interview table, what are some of the like common mistakes people make when prepping for these things? What are the red flags you see as an interviewer?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I think one of the biggest pitfalls I see is people focusing too much on, like, memorizing solutions instead of really understanding the underlying concepts.
Oh, so it's not about just like regurgitating code. It's about
No,
actually
no. It's
understand.
about showing that you can think critically and solve problems.
So it's not about memorizing lines from a play. It's about understanding the character's motivations and being able to improvise if the scene changes.
Exactly.
Okay, and you said that was one of the biggest pitfalls.
Yeah. Oh, and another common mistake is neglecting that behavioral aspect of the interview. We talked about that before, but
Mm.
yeah, the technical skills are obviously paramount,
Mm.
but those soft skills are just as important.
Right. Being a brilliant coder isn't enough. You need to be able to communicate those ideas, work with a team, and just generally like be someone people actually want to work with.
Exactly. And that's where that behavioral preparation section in the book really shines. It gives you the tools and strategies you need to showcase those all-important soft skills and, make a good impression on those interviewers.
Okay, you've convinced me. This book sounds like a must-read for anyone even thinking about tackling a coding interview. But let's maybe dive into some more specifics. You mentioned earlier that Gale gives you this behind-the-scenes look at how companies like Google and Facebook structure their hiring processes. Like, what kind of insider knowledge does she actually reveal?
Well, for starters, she kind of demystifies the criteria that these companies use to evaluate candidates. It's not just about, getting the right answer. They're looking at how you approach the problem, your coding style, even your communication skills during the interview.
So it's like a holistic assessment. They're taking into account not just your technical prowess, but also your personality, your fit within the company culture.
Right, it's the whole package.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. And she also provides insights into the types of questions you're likely to encounter at each stage of the interview process, from the initial phone screen to the, on-site technical rounds.
Okay, so just knowing what to expect is already like half the battle.
It can definitely help.
Now let's talk about those 150 programming questions. What stood out to you as being particularly helpful or maybe challenging in that section?
Hmm. For me, the most insightful part was that breakdown of the 5 algorithm approaches we talked about before, like brute force, dynamic programming, all that. She doesn't just present the algorithms, she explains why they work, when to use them effectively.
So she's not just giving you the fish, she's teaching you how to fish.
Exactly.
But 150 questions, that's a lot.
It is.
Where would you even begin if you were like prepping for an interview?
I'd say focus on the technical areas that are most relevant to your background and the types of roles you're interested in. You don't need to master every single question in the book.
Okay, that's a relief.
Yeah, just prioritize and customize your study plan to fit your own needs and goals.
So there's no like one size fits all approach.
Nope, the book's a resource, not a rigid curriculum.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. But before we move on to part 2, let's do a quick recap for our listeners. So we established that coding interviews are a unique beast. They require not just technical skills, but also strong communication and those interpersonal abilities. We also touched on the structure of Dale's book, highlighting her comprehensive approach to interview prep, from demystifying the hiring process to providing practical strategies for tackling both technical and behavioral questions.
And maybe most importantly, we emphasize that success in coding interviews isn't just about memorizing solutions. It's about developing a deep understanding of core concepts, honing your problem-solving skills, and just showcasing your ability to think critically and creatively under pressure.
Well said. Now, I'm really eager to dive into some of the book's more specific insights and strategies, so let's take a quick break and come back for part 2, where we'll really get into the nitty-gritty of cracking the coding interview. Stay tuned. Okay, so we're back and ready to dig even deeper into cracking the coding interview. One of the things that I found really intriguing in the first part of our conversation was this idea of Gail kind of giving you, I don't know, like a peek behind the curtain at how these tech giants make their hiring decisions. It's like getting, a secret decoder ring for the interview process.
Yeah.
So, like, what kind of insider intel does she actually reveal?
Well, what I found super fascinating is how she breaks down the specific criteria that these companies use to evaluate candidates.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about finding like the quote-unquote right answer to a coding problem, right?
Right.
They're also looking at your problem-solving approach,
Yeah.
how clean and efficient your code is, even how well you communicate your thought process during the interview itself.
So it's almost like they're evaluating your coding personality, not just your technical skills. Does she give any, like, examples of what a good coding style looks like versus a bad one? Because I'm picturing, like, some programmers write code like they're Jackson Pollock, just splattering paint everywhere, and others who are very, like, neat and tidy.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And yes, she absolutely provides examples. Think of it this way. You can have two pieces of code that achieve the same result, right?
Right.
But one might be super convoluted and difficult to understand, while the other is very elegant and easy to follow. And interviewers, they're really looking for that elegance. They want to see that you can write code that's not only functional, but also maintainable,
Yeah.
scalable.
Okay, so it's about thinking beyond just getting the code to work. You have to write it in a way that other people can understand and work with.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But let's go back to those 150 programming questions for a second. You mentioned earlier that Gale breaks down like these 5 algorithm approaches.
Right.
Could you give us like a real world example of how one of these approaches might be used in an interview?
Sure. Let's say you're asked to find the shortest path between 2 points on a map. This is like a classic problem that can be solved using dynamic programming.
Okay.
So instead of trying to calculate the shortest path all at once, you break it down into smaller subproblems. You figure out the shortest path to each intermediary point. You store those results, and then you use those to build up to the final solution. It's like building a brick wall. You do it one brick at a time.
Okay, that's actually a pretty clear explanation. I can see how breaking it down like that would make a complex problem feel a little more manageable. But I'm not going to lie, when I hear terms like dynamic programming, my brain starts to freeze up a little bit. Is there a way to think about these concepts that's like a little less, I don't know, technical?
Sure. Think of it this way. Imagine you're planning a road trip across the country. You wouldn't try to drive the entire route in one go, would you?
No, definitely not.
You would break it down into smaller, more manageable chunks, right?
Yeah.
Stopping at hotels along the way, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's essentially what dynamic programming is all about.
Okay, that's a much more relatable analogy. So instead of feeling overwhelmed by the entire journey, you're focusing on conquering one leg of the trip at a time. And along the way, you're gathering information and resources that will help you reach your final destination.
Exactly.
I like that. But let's shift gears for a minute and talk about that behavioral side of the interview again. What are some of the key takeaways from the what is it called? The behavioral preparation
Yeah.
section
Yeah, behavioral prep.
that really stuck with you?
One thing that really resonated with me was Gail's emphasis on showcasing your passion. Like your passion for problem solving and learning. It's not enough to just be technically competent.
Right.
You need to demonstrate that you're genuinely excited about, tackling challenges
Yeah.
and pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
So it's about conveying that enthusiasm, that intellectual curiosity, showing them you're not just in it for the paycheck, but because you actually like love what you do,
Yeah.
which makes sense. I mean, they want to hire someone who's going to be excited to come to work every day and actually contribute to the team,
Right.
not just like clock in and clock out.
Yeah, they want someone who's passionate.
Yeah.
And she also provides specific examples of how to weave that passion into your responses to behavioral questions. Like, for example, if you're asked about a time you failed, don't just focus on the mistake. Talk about what you learned from it and how it fueled your desire to improve.
Oh, so it's about turning a negative into a positive,
All right.
demonstrating that you're someone who's constantly learning and growing.
Exactly.
I like that. But let's be honest, some people are just naturally better at talking about themselves than others.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What if you're someone who's like a little more introverted or shy? Does Gail offer any advice for those folks?
She does. One of her key suggestions is to practice your responses to common behavioral questions out loud, even if it feels, a little awkward at first. You could even record yourself and listen back to identify areas where you can improve.
Oh, that's a great tip. It's like rehearsing for a play. The more you practice, the more comfortable and confident you'll feel when the spotlight's on you.
Exactly.
Makes sense?
And she also emphasizes the importance of, just being genuine and authentic. Don't try to be someone you're not. Let your personality shine through.
Right, because interviewers can spot a phony a mile away.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah, they're not looking for a coding robot. They're looking for a real person who they can connect with and who'll be a good fit for their team. But one thing that I still find a little puzzling is this whole idea of culture fit. It seems like such a subjective thing.
Yeah, it can be.
How do you even assess whether someone's a good culture fit, especially in a technical interview?
That's a great question, and it's one that honestly a lot of companies are grappling with. But I think it's important to remember that culture fit shouldn't be about, conforming to some rigid mold. It's more about finding people who share the company's core values
Yeah.
and who will thrive in their work environment.
So it's less about being like a carbon copy of everyone else and more about finding people who complement the team and bring their own unique perspectives and experiences to the table.
Exactly. That's a much more inclusive and dynamic approach to building a team.
For sure.
And Gail stresses the importance of researching the company culture beforehand. So you can go into the interview with a clear understanding of what they value and how you can align your own experiences and aspirations with their mission.
So it's about doing your homework, being prepared to articulate how your values and goals mesh with theirs. It's about showing them that you're not just looking for a job, you're looking for a place where you can make a meaningful contribution and feel like you belong.
Exactly.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, from technical algorithms to behavioral tips, even delving into the complexities of culture fit. But I'm still curious to hear more about your personal experiences on both sides of the interview table. What are some of the qualities that, really stand out to you in a strong coding interview candidate? What makes someone truly memorable?
For me, it's all about that aha moment. It's when a candidate not only solves the problem, but they do it in a way that's clever, efficient, even a little bit beautiful.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, they're showing off their coding artistry almost.
Exactly.
So it's about going beyond just the functional and into the realm of elegant problem solving.
Yeah, it's that spark of creativity and ingenuity that sets someone apart.
Okay, so they have to wow you.
They have to wow me.
And it's not just about the final solution, right?
No, it's about the journey they take to get there. I want to see their thought process unfold. I want to hear them articulate their reasoning, even if they, hit roadblocks along the way.
So it's about embracing the struggle, demonstrating that you can think critically and adapt your approach when things get tough.
Yeah, because that's what really separates, the problem solvers from the code monkeys.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's about showing you have that intellectual curiosity and that resilience, which, that's essential for success in any field, but especially in the fast-paced world of technology.
Absolutely.
All right, this conversation is giving me so much to think about. I'm starting to see why cracking the coding interview has become such a go-to resource for aspiring software engineers. It's not just a technical manual, it's a guide to navigating this whole interview process with confidence and clarity.
It's a good reminder that success in these interviews isn't just about being, a brilliant coder. It's about being a well-rounded individual, someone who can think critically, communicate effectively, and just demonstrate a genuine passion for what they do.
Well said. And I think that's a perfect segue into the final part of our deep dive, where we'll wrap up our discussion and leave our listeners with some, I don't know, thought-provoking questions,
Yeah.
maybe some actionable advice for acing their coding interviews. So stick with us for one last insightful segment. We'll be right back.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into cracking the coding interview. We've talked a lot about the technical skills and strategies you need to ace these interviews, but I feel like there's something even more, I don't know, fundamental at play here.
Yeah, I agree. There's a certain mindset, a way of approaching these challenges that really sets successful candidates apart.
Exactly, and that's what I kind of want to focus on in this last segment. So I'm curious, from your experience, what are some of the mental habits or approaches that you've seen in those who really excel in these interview situations? Well, one thing that always stands out to me is a willingness to embrace, ambiguity, because coding interviews, they often present you with problems that are intentionally open-ended. There are multiple possible solutions, and the best candidates, they don't get flustered by that lack of clear direction.
Mhm.
They see it as an opportunity to showcase their creativity
Yeah.
and their problem-solving skills.
So it's about being comfortable with not having all the answers right away. It's that ability to like think on your feet and adapt your approach as you gather more information.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's also about being able to, articulate your thought process clearly, even if you're not 100% sure where you're going to end up.
Right.
Because interviewers, they want to see how your mind works, how you break down a problem, how you arrive at a solution.
So it's not just about the destination, it's about the journey. Okay. And that actually brings me to a question I've been wanting to ask you. We've talked a lot about Gail's book as a guide for candidates, but what about for the interviewers themselves? Do you think there are any lessons they can learn from this book as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think cracking the coding interview can be just as valuable for interviewers as it is for candidates. It provides a framework for, you know, designing effective interview questions, evaluating candidates fairly, creating a positive and supportive interview experience.
That's an interesting perspective. So it's not just about like grilling candidates with tough questions. It's about creating an environment where they can actually showcase their skills and their potential.
Right. It's about recognizing that the interview process is a two-way street.
Yeah, it's a conversation.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about building a relationship with the candidate, understanding their motivations, giving them the space to, demonstrate their ability.
That makes a lot of sense. After all, you're not just looking for someone who can code. You're looking for someone who you can see yourself working with, someone who's going to bring value to your team and your company.
Exactly.
And the interview process should reflect that.
It should be a collaborative and engaging experience that benefits both the candidate and the company.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored the technical and behavioral aspects of coding interviews. We've delved into like the mindset and strategies for success. We even touched on the importance of creating a positive and supportive interview experience.
It's been quite a journey,
Yeah, it has.
but I think we've equipped our listeners with some valuable insights and tools
Yeah,
to help them navigate this, challenging but ultimately rewarding process.
for sure. And as we wrap up here, I want to leave our listeners with a thought-provoking question to ponder. Imagine you're designing a coding interview question. What problem would you pose to test a candidate's, their skills and their creativity?
Ooh, that's a good one. Let me think. I think I would challenge them to design an algorithm that could predict the next viral meme.
Ooh, okay. That's tough. That would require not just like technical skills, but also an understanding of social trends and cultural nuances.
Right.
I love it.
It's about thinking outside the box and applying those technical skills to real-world problems.
Exactly. So to our listeners out there, we encourage you to think about what problem you would pose. It's a great way to, solidify your understanding of the concepts we've discussed and put yourself in the interviewer's shoes.
Yeah, give it a try.
And as you continue on your coding interview journey, remember to stay curious, embrace those challenges, and never stop learning. This world of technology, it's constantly evolving, and the most successful individuals are those who are adaptable and, eager to grow.
Well said.
We hope this deep dive into cracking the coding interview has been helpful and inspiring. And who knows, maybe one day you'll be the one designing those challenging and thought-provoking interview questions.
Until next time, happy coding, everyone.
And best of luck in those interviews.